I'm Teresa, 62 years old. Never thought my family would betray me like this. One moment I was talking to my daughter, the next her husband's fist connected with my face. I collapsed on the kitchen floor, stunned. Then Amanda grabbed my hair, dragging me outside as neighbors watched in silence. Through my tears, I heard her screaming about $5 million. The ultimate betrayal from my only child. Then came the sound that changed everything. Police sirens. Someone had called 911. Let me know where you're watching from, and subscribe to hear how money turned my loved ones into enemies, and how I found justice when I thought all hope was lost. I used to have a beautiful family. Frank, my husband of 35 years, was the love of my life. We met at State University in 1981, where I was studying education, and he was pursuing engineering. From our first date at a small Italian restaurant near campus, I knew he was special. After graduation, we married in a simple ceremony with just close family and friends. Frank became a respected structural engineer working on several major projects across the state, including the new Children's Hospital and the Riverside development. I taught third grade at Washington Elementary for over 30 years. We lived modestly in a 2-story suburban house with a garden Frank loved tending on weekends. Every decision we made was careful and thoughtful. We drove our cars until they practically fell apart. Our vacations were camping trips and road trips instead of luxury resorts. We saved diligently for retirement and put money aside for our only daughter Amanda's education. Amanda was our pride and joy. She inherited Frank's analytical mind and my compassion. We taught her the value of hard work, saving money, and treating others with kindness. When she graduated from high school as valedictorian, we couldn't have been prouder. She went to the same university where Frank and I met, and we supported her financially so she could focus on her studies instead of working part-time jobs like we had to. During her senior year, Amanda met Jason. He came from a wealthy family and worked in finance. The first time she brought him home, I remember how charming he was. He complimented my cooking, asked Frank thoughtful questions about his engineering projects, and seemed genuinely interested in our family photos. Frank was initially cautious, always the protective father, but even he warmed up to Jason over time. When they got engaged a year later, we were thrilled. Frank and I paid for most of their wedding, a beautiful ceremony at a country club that cost more than our own house down payment had been. But we wanted Amanda to have her dream day, and Jason's parents contributed to the honeymoon in Europe. Life was good. Amanda and Jason bought a starter home about 30 minutes away. They visited regularly for Sunday dinners. When they announced Amanda was pregnant with Sophie, Frank cried tears of joy. 3 years later, Dylan came along. My weekends filled with babysitting my beautiful grandchildren, teaching Sophie to bake cookies using my mother's recipes, and watching Frank play catch with little Dylan in the backyard. Everything changed when Frank was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The doctors gave him 6 months, but my stubborn husband fought for 2 years. Amanda was supportive during this time, coming over frequently to help with his care. Jason would often bring the kids and take Frank for short walks around the neighborhood when he still had the strength. The medical bills piled up despite our insurance. We had to use some of our retirement savings, but Frank had always been prudent with our finances. Years earlier, he had purchased a substantial life insurance policy, wanting to make sure I would be taken care of if anything happened to him. When Frank finally passed, I was devastated. 35 years together, and suddenly I was alone. The house felt too quiet, too empty. Amanda helped me through the funeral arrangements and stayed with me for a week afterward. The grandkids brought some light into those dark days with their innocent questions about where Grandpa had gone and their spontaneous hugs. The life insurance policy paid out $5 million, a sum that seemed almost unreal to someone who had lived as modestly as I had. Frank had also left our house fully paid off and about $300,000 in retirement accounts. For a retired teacher, I was suddenly quite wealthy, though all I really wanted was to have Frank back. For the first few months after Frank's death, Jason was incredibly supportive. He helped me organize Frank's belongings, drove me to grief counseling sessions, and advised me on how to handle the insurance money. I was grateful for his help, as financial matters had always been more Frank's domain than mine. Looking back, I should have seen the warning signs. They were subtle at first, like shadows at dusk, that you barely notice until darkness has already fallen. About 6 months after Frank passed, Jason began suggesting investment opportunities for my life insurance money. At Sunday dinner, he casually mentioned a real estate development his firm was handling. "It's really exclusive, Teresa. Minimum buy-in is 2 million, but I could get you in for 1 million as a family favor. The returns are projected at 15 to 20% annually." When I hesitated, saying I needed time to think about it, his smile tightened. "Of course, take your time. But opportunities like this don't come along often. I'd hate to see you miss out." Amanda chimed in. "Mom, Jason is just trying to help. Dad would want you to grow the money, not just let it sit in a bank account." That was the first time I felt the subtle pressure, the first time Amanda sided with Jason, instead of respecting my caution. I had joined a grief support group at the community centre and made friends with several other widows and widowers. When I mentioned Jason's investment opportunity, Sarah, who had lost her husband to a heart attack 2 years prior, frowned. "My son-in-law did the same thing," she said during coffee after our meeting. "Turned out the investment was legitimate but incredibly high risk. I lost nearly half of what I put in. Just be careful, Teresa." I declined Jason's offer, saying I preferred more conservative investments for now. He nodded understandingly, but I noticed how he exchanged glances with Amanda. That night they left earlier than usual, without the customary invitation for me to visit them the following weekend. The next change I noticed involved my grandchildren. Sophie, who had always been eager to spend weekends with me, suddenly had too many activities: Girl Scouts, soccer practice, piano lessons. Dylan still wanted to visit, but Amanda always seemed to have reasons why it wasn't convenient. When they did visit, both children would ask for expensive gifts. Sophie at 12 wanted designer clothes and the latest iPhone. Dylan, only 9, requested elaborate gaming systems and electronics. "Grandma, Mum said you're super rich now," Sophie said once while helping me bake cookies. "She said you could buy us anything we want." I was troubled by this. Frank and I had always taught Amanda that money wasn't for frivolous spending, that wealth came with responsibility. Now she seemed to be teaching her children the opposite. When I finally managed to have the grandkids for a weekend, I noticed other concerning things. Sophie mentioned they had to be careful what they said around me because Dad says Grandma might change her mind about helping us if she knows. "Helping you with what?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "With the new house," Sophie replied. "The one with the pool and the media room. Dad says we can't afford it unless you help." This was news to me. Amanda and Jason had never mentioned wanting to move. Their current home was spacious and in an excellent school district. Why would they need something bigger? The next concerning development came when I received a call from my attorney, Harold Williams, who had been Frank's college roommate and our family lawyer for decades. "Teresa, Jason called me asking about your will," Harold said, his voice conveying concern, even over the phone. "He was particularly interested in whether you had established any trusts for Amanda and the grandchildren." "I haven't made any changes since Frank passed," I told him. "Everything will go to Amanda eventually, but I hadn't thought about setting up specific trusts." He seemed very focused on irrevocable trusts and ways to protect assets from estate taxes. "Just wanted to give you a heads up. This kind of inquiry from a son-in-law rather than the client herself is unusual." I thanked Harold for letting me know. That weekend, I casually brought up the subject during Sunday dinner. "Jason, Harold mentioned you called him about my will." Jason's fork paused midway to his mouth. Amanda looked between us, her expression unreadable. "Just trying to help Teresa," he said smoothly. "Estate taxes can eat up a large portion of inheritance. I was exploring options to protect the family legacy." "That's thoughtful, but I'd prefer to handle my legal affairs myself," I said firmly. "Of course," Jason replied with a tight smile. "I'm just concerned about Amanda and the kids. 5 million might seem like a lot, but after taxes and with inflation, it won't go as far as you might think." The conversation moved on, but the atmosphere had changed. When I hugged Amanda goodbye that evening, she held me at arm's length. Mom, Jason is only trying to help. Dad always handled the finances, and we just want to make sure you're making good decisions. The implications stung. That I couldn't make sound financial decisions without a man's guidance, that I needed their supervision. Frank had never treated me that way in all our years together. As the weeks passed, I noticed my invitations to family events dwindled. When I did see the grandchildren, they seemed coached in what to say to me. Once I overheard Jason on the phone in the kitchen during a rare visit to their house. "She's being stubborn about the money," he was saying in a low voice. "But we have time. She's not getting any younger, and eventually it all comes to Amanda anyway." The casual callousness of his tone sent a chill through me. I left the house that day with a growing sense of unease, wondering if the loving family I thought I had was just an illusion. The real turning point came about a year after Frank's death. I had stopped by Amanda and Jason's house unannounced, something I rarely did, but felt necessary after they had cancelled 3 consecutive Sunday dinners. I wanted to bring Sophie her favourite cookies for her school bake sale the next day. When I pulled into their driveway, I noticed an unfamiliar luxury SUV parked there. As I approached the front door, I could hear raised voices inside. I hesitated, then rang the doorbell. The voices immediately hushed. After a moment, Amanda opened the door, her expression shifting from annoyance to surprise. "Mom, we weren't expecting you." "I brought cookies for Sophie's bake sale," I explained, holding up the container. "Is everything okay?" I thought I heard arguing. "Everything's fine," Amanda said quickly, taking the container but not inviting me in. "Just having a discussion with Jason about work stuff. Thanks for the cookies." Over her shoulder, I could see Jason in the living room with another man in a suit, papers spread across the coffee table. Both looked tense. "Are you sure I can't come in for a minute? I haven't seen the kids in weeks." "They're at activities," Amanda said. "I'll call you tomorrow, okay?" The door closed in my face before I could respond. I stood there for a moment, hurt and confused, before walking back to my car. As I was backing out of the driveway, I saw the stranger emerge from the house and get into the luxury SUV. He looked stressed. 2 days later, I received an unexpected phone call from a woman named Patricia Lewis, who introduced herself as Jason's former co-worker. "Mrs. Wilson, I hope you don't mind me calling. I got your number from the church directory. I felt you should know something about your son-in-law." Patricia explained that Jason had been fired from his position at the investment firm 3 months ago for ethical violations. He had been pushing clients into high-risk investments that paid him substantial commissions, but had lost several people significant amounts of money. "I'm only telling you this because I overheard him at a bar last week bragging about how he was going to tap into his mother-in-law's fortune now that his other income streams had dried up. I'd hate to see anyone else get hurt by his schemes." I thanked her for the information, my mind reeling. 3 months. Jason had been unemployed for 3 months, yet Amanda had said nothing. They still lived in their beautiful house, drove expensive cars, and maintained their country club membership. Where was the money coming from? That evening, I called Amanda directly. "Why didn't you tell me Jason lost his job?" There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "Who told you that?" she finally asked, her voice cold. "Does it matter? Is it true?" Another pause. "It's a temporary situation. He was let go due to company restructuring, not because of anything he did wrong. He's interviewing at several firms now." The lie hurt more than the concealment. My daughter, who I had raised to value honesty above all, was now lying to protect Jason's reputation. "Amanda, if you're having financial difficulties, we can talk about it. But I need honesty." "We're fine, Mum," she snapped. "We don't need your charity." "It's not charity to help family," I said, remembering all the sacrifices Frank and I had made for her over the years. There was a long sigh on the other end of the phone. "Actually, Mum, we do have a small cash flow issue. Nothing serious, but the timing is bad with Jason between jobs. We were going to ask if we could borrow some money, just temporarily." "How much?" I asked, already knowing it wouldn't be a small amount. 300,000, just until Jason secures his new position. The headhunter said it should be any day now. The amount shocked me. $300,000 was not a small cash flow issue. It was more money than some people made in a lifetime. What's the money for Amanda specifically? Another pause. We have some credit card debt, and the mortgage is behind, and Sophie's private school tuition is due. I thought you had an emergency fund, I said. Frank and I had always emphasized the importance of having 6 months of expenses saved. We had to use it, Amanda said vaguely. Look, if you don't want to help, just say so. I'm not saying that. I'm trying to understand the situation. 300,000 is a lot of money. It's nothing to you now, Mum. You have 5 million just sitting there. Dad would have wanted you to help us. The invocation of Frank's wishes felt manipulative. Frank would have wanted to help, yes, but he also would have wanted to understand the full picture and ensure any help was actually beneficial in the long run, not enabling poor financial decisions. Let me think about it, I said finally. And Amanda, I'd like to see some documentation. Credit card statements, mortgage papers, bills, so I can understand what's going on. You don't trust us, she said flatly. It's not about trust. It's about being responsible with money. Your father taught me that. She hung up without saying goodbye. The next day, I received a barrage of angry text messages from Amanda, accusing me of being selfish, of loving money more than my own family. Jason sent an email full of financial jargon explaining how a temporary loan would be structured with interest and repayment terms, as if formalizing it would make the request more reasonable. I showed the email to Harold, my attorney, who raised his eyebrows. These terms are actually quite predatory, he noted. The kind of structure you'd use for a high-risk borrower, not a family loan. And the clause about collateralizing against future inheritance is concerning. What does that mean exactly? It means if they defaulted on repaying you, they'd essentially be getting a portion of their inheritance early. It's very unusual in a family situation. That evening I received a call from my brother Tom, who lived in Arizona. We spoke regularly, but usually on weekends. Teresa, is everything okay? Amanda just called me ranting about how you're refusing to help them financially, and they might lose their house. I was stunned. Amanda had rarely spoken to her uncle independently since moving away for college. That's not exactly what happened, I explained, and gave him the full story. Tom was silent for a moment. This doesn't sound like the Amanda I know, and it definitely doesn't sound like responsible adults who need a temporary loan. It sounds like they've been living beyond their means for a while and see your money as the solution. What should I do? Protect yourself, Tom said firmly. Don't give them money without understanding where it's going. And maybe talk to a financial advisor about protecting your assets. I don't want to sound alarmist, but people can do desperate things when money is involved, even family. After hanging up, I sat in Frank's old armchair, wishing desperately that he were here to help me navigate this situation. He had always been better at handling difficult conversations, at finding solutions that worked for everyone, without compromising our values. The next day I received an email from Sophie's school thanking me for my generous donation to their building fund. This was peculiar, as I had made no such donation. When I called the development office for clarification, they explained that Jason had pledged $50,000 in my name, saying it was a gift from Sophie's grandmother. I was speechless. Not only had I not authorized this, but they were asking for donations in my name, while simultaneously claiming financial hardship. When I explained that there had been a misunderstanding and I had not approved this donation, the development officer was understanding, but concerned. This is awkward, Mrs. Wilson, but Mr. Parker has already received recognition for your pledge at the school gala last month. There was a whole presentation about your family's multi-generational support of the school. The deception was becoming more elaborate, more public. It wasn't just about asking me for money anymore. They were creating obligations in my name, presenting themselves as philanthropists with access to my funds. I drove to Amanda and Jason's house that afternoon, determined to have an honest conversation. When I arrived, only Amanda was home, the children still at school. We need to talk about the school donation, I said as soon as she let me in. Amanda had the grace to look embarrassed. Jason was trying to help Sophie. The donation guarantees her spot through graduation. That's not the point, Amanda. You can't make financial commitments in my name. It's not just inappropriate, it could be considered fraud. Don't be dramatic, Mum. Jason said you were planning to help us financially anyway, so he just expedited things. I never agreed to give you $300,000, let alone make donations to the school. Amanda's expression hardened. You have more money than you could ever spend. Dad would be ashamed of how selfish you're being. The accusation hit me like a physical blow. Frank had been the most generous person I knew, but never at the expense of financial responsibility or honest dealing. Your father would be concerned about your lifestyle and Jason's unemployment, not my reluctance to enable financial irresponsibility. Jason was forced out because he wouldn't play political games, Amanda said defensively. And our lifestyle is none of your business. It becomes my business when you ask me for $300,000 and make commitments in my name. Our argument escalated. Amanda revealed that they were indeed behind on their mortgage, had maxed out multiple credit cards, and owed money to various friends and family members. The private school country club memberships, luxury cars, and expensive vacations had all been financed on credit, with the expectation that Jason's income would continue to grow. Now, with him unemployed, the house of cards was collapsing. We just need some time to get back on our feet, Amanda insisted. The loan would be temporary. I'm willing to help, I said carefully, but there need to be conditions. Financial counseling, a realistic budget, possibly selling some assets to reduce debt. So you'll only help if you can control our lives, Amanda said bitterly. That's not help, that's a power play. It's being responsible, I countered. I won't throw money at a problem without addressing the underlying issues. We reached no resolution that day. Amanda agreed to discuss my conditions with Jason and get back to me. But as I drove home, I felt a growing sense of distance between us, a chasm that seemed to widen with each conversation. The next few weeks brought more revelations. Friends from church mentioned that Amanda had borrowed money from them, always with the promise that repayment would come once her family inheritance situation was resolved. My neighbor reported that Jason had approached him about investing in a new business venture, using my name as a supposed silent partner to lend credibility. The web of financial manipulation extended further than I had imagined. It wasn't just about asking me for money anymore. They were leveraging my reputation, my relationships, and the assumption of my eventual support to create a facade of financial stability. Meanwhile, my access to my grandchildren became increasingly restricted. When I did see them, they seemed confused by the tension between their parents and me. Sophie once asked me directly, "Grandma, why won't you help Mum and Dad? They say we might have to move to a smaller house and change schools if you don't." The guilt tactics extended to using the children, which crossed a line I hadn't thought Amanda capable of crossing. That night, I called my attorney again, this time to discuss protecting my assets more formally and ensuring that any help I provided would actually benefit my grandchildren's well-being, not just maintain their parents' unsustainable lifestyle. Over the next few months, Jason and Amanda shifted tactics. The angry demands and guilt trips suddenly transformed into warmth and reconciliation attempts. Jason called to apologize for the misunderstanding about the school donation. Amanda invited me for dinner without mentioning money. The grandchildren were suddenly available for visits again. I was cautiously optimistic but wary. The sudden change felt calculated rather than genuine. Still, I missed my family and wanted to believe that we could repair our relationship. During one Sunday dinner at their house, Jason brought up an interesting proposition. "Teresa, we've been thinking about your living situation. That big house must feel empty now, and the maintenance has to be a burden." "I manage fine," I said, though truthfully the house did sometimes feel too large for just one person. "We have a wonderful idea," Amanda jumped in enthusiastically. "You know that guest house on our property? We could convert it into a proper in-law suite for you. You could sell your house, invest the proceeds, and be close to us and the grandchildren." The offer was tempting. Living near my grandchildren, seeing them every day, instead of whenever their parents permitted it. having family close by as I aged. It's a generous offer, I said carefully. Let me think about it. Over the next few weeks, they mounted a full campaign. They showed me renovation plans for the guest house, which was indeed a charming cottage on their 1-acre property. The grandchildren made drawings of things we could do together once I lived nearby. Amanda talked about movie nights and Sunday dinners. I consulted with Tom, who remained skeptical. Just be careful, he warned. Make sure any arrangement is formalized legally. Don't commingle assets or put yourself in a financially vulnerable position. But the allure of family closeness was strong, especially after 2 years of increasing isolation following Frank's death. After much consideration, I agreed to sell my house and move into their renovated guest house, with the stipulation that I would own the structure outright as a condition of paying for the renovations. My home sold quickly in the hot real estate market, netting me just over $400,000. The renovations to the guest house cost nearly $200,000, transforming it from a basic 2-room structure to a comfortable small home with a bedroom, bathroom, kitchen, living area, and even a small office where I could pursue my new hobby of writing children's stories. For a few months, everything seemed perfect. I had daily breakfast with the grandchildren before they left for school. Amanda and I went shopping together like we used to. Jason seemed less focused on money and more engaged as a father and son-in-law. I started to believe that perhaps the financial tension had been a temporary aberration, a result of stress and poor communication. Then came the day I borrowed Amanda's laptop to check my email when mine was being repaired. After logging out of my account, I noticed a document open in the background. The title caught my eye: Irrevocable Trust Transfer T. Wilson Assets. I shouldn't have looked. I knew that. But concern overrode my better judgment, and I clicked on the document. It was a detailed plan for transferring my assets into an irrevocable trust with Jason and Amanda as trustees. The document included notes about convincing Teresa of diminished capacity benefits and ensuring control of assets while minimizing tax implications. Most disturbing was a timeline at the bottom of the document, which included the guest house renovation as a key step labeled Phase 1, Proximity and Dependency Establishment. My hands were shaking as I closed the document and shut down the laptop. This wasn't just financial opportunism. This was a calculated plan to gain control of my assets, potentially by declaring me incompetent to manage my own affairs. The renovation, the reconciliation, all of it had been part of a strategy. That evening, Sophie came to the guest house to borrow a book. As she browsed my small bookshelf, she mentioned casually, "Dad says once the papers are signed next month, we can start planning our trip to Europe." "What papers?" I asked, trying to sound merely curious. "I don't know exactly. Something about your money. Dad says once it's in the family trust, we won't have to worry about money anymore." My suspicions were confirmed. There were papers being prepared, arrangements being made, all without my knowledge or consent. The next day, while everyone was out, I used Amanda's key to enter the main house and check Jason's home office. In the file cabinet, I found drafts of legal documents for an irrevocable trust power of attorney forms and even a preliminary medical evaluation form with sections highlighted about cognitive assessment and capacity determination. They were planning to have me declared incompetent to handle my own financial affairs. The realization was like ice water in my veins. These people were not just my family, they were potentially my greatest threat. I called Harold immediately and explained what I had found. He advised me to consult with an elder law specialist and to secure my financial accounts right away. I made appointments with both Harold and a recommended elder law attorney for the following week. In the meantime, I began quietly moving important documents and valuables to a safe deposit box at a bank different from the one Jason and Amanda used. My plan was to move out quietly, to find an apartment or small house to rent, while I sorted out my next steps legally and financially. I didn't confront them immediately, wanting first to ensure my assets were protected and to have a safe place to go. 3 days later, however, my hand was forced. I overheard Jason on the phone with someone discussing a doctor's appointment scheduled for me that I knew nothing about. Dr. Rankin understands the situation, he was saying. The evaluation will support our petition. By next month, the trust should be established and the transfers complete. I realized I couldn't wait any longer. The appointment with this Dr. Rankin was likely the first step in having me declared incompetent, and it was apparently imminent. I needed to leave immediately. I waited until Jason left for a golf game, planning to speak with Amanda alone. With my car already packed with essentials, I walked from the guest house to the main house, my heart pounding with a mixture of sorrow and resolve. I found Amanda in the kitchen sorting through mail. She looked up, surprised to see me in the middle of a weekday, when I usually volunteered at the library. "Mom, I didn't know you were home today." "We need to talk, Amanda," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I know about the trust documents, the power of attorney forms, and the appointment with Dr. Rankin." Her face went pale, then flushed with anger. "You went through our personal papers. That's an invasion of privacy." "And planning to have me declared incompetent isn't," I countered. "Amanda, what happened to you? We raised you to be honest, to value family over money." "This is about family," she insisted. "About securing our future, the children's education, our retirement. You have more money than you need while we're struggling. So ask me for help directly. Don't scheme behind my back to take control of my assets." "We tried asking," she exclaimed. "You wanted conditions control oversight. Jason said this way is cleaner, more efficient for everyone." "More efficient for Jason to control $5 million without any accountability," I said bitterly. "I'm leaving today, Amanda. I won't stay where I'm being manipulated and deceived." Her expression changed then from defensive to desperate. "You can't leave. The trust paperwork is already being processed. Dr. Rankin is expecting you tomorrow. We've told everyone you've been having memory issues." "That's a lie," I said, shocked at how far they had gone. "I'm perfectly competent." "It's your word against ours," Amanda replied, a coldness in her voice I had never heard before. A grieving widow, possibly depressed, definitely showing signs of cognitive decline according to her concerned family. "Harold knows the truth, and so does Tom. They'll support me. Harold is old and semi-retired, and Tom lives across the country. We're your immediate family, your caregivers. Who do you think the courts will listen to?" The calculated nature of their plan became clear. They had been laying groundwork perhaps for months, establishing a narrative of my supposed decline. The guest house suddenly felt less like a gesture of inclusion and more like a way to isolate and monitor me. "I'm leaving now," I said firmly, turning toward the door. "I'll have movers collect my things later." "You're not going anywhere," Amanda said, grabbing her phone. "I'm calling Jason. He's just at the country club. He can be back in 10 minutes. "I'm 62 years old, Amanda. You can't keep me here against my will." She moved to block the door. "Just wait until Jason gets here. We can discuss this rationally." "There's nothing rational to discuss. You and Jason plan to have me declared incompetent to gain control of my money. That's elder abuse and fraud." We argued back and forth, the confrontation growing more heated. Amanda refused to move from the door, insisting I wait for Jason. I tried to step around her, and she grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin. "Let go of me," I said, trying to pull away. That's when we heard the garage door opening. Jason had returned. Amanda's grip relaxed slightly in relief, and I took the opportunity to wrench my arm free and move toward the front door instead. I had just reached the foyer when Jason entered from the garage. He assessed the situation quickly, his expression darkening. "Teresa, what's going on?" he asked, his voice deceptively calm. "She knows about the trust papers," Amanda said before I could respond. "She was trying to leave." Jason's facade of concerned son-in-law instantly vanished. His eyes hardened as he moved to stand beside Amanda, both of them now blocking my exit. "That's unfortunate timing," he said coldly. "The papers will be ready to sign next week. We just needed you to see Dr. Rankin first." "I'm not seeing any doctor you've arranged, and I'm not signing anything," I stated firmly. "Now please move aside. I'm leaving." "You're confused, Teresa," Jason said loudly, as if performing for an audience. "This is exactly why we're concerned about your cognitive state. Amanda, maybe we should call Dr. Rankin now, see if he can come here for an emergency evaluation. I realized with growing horror that they were creating a scene establishing a narrative that could be recounted later to doctors or even police. Jason was speaking unnaturally loudly, enunciating each word as if for a recording. "I am perfectly lucid," I replied, matching his volume. "And I am leaving now. If you don't move aside, I will call the police." I reached for my phone in my pocket, but before I could retrieve it, Jason lunged forward. His hand struck my face with stunning force, sending me sprawling backward onto the marble foyer floor. My head hit the ground hard, sending shockwaves of pain through my skull. For a moment, I lay there in complete disbelief. My son-in-law had just hit me, actually struck me with enough force to knock me down. The physical pain was intense, but the emotional pain was devastating. These were not strangers, but my daughter and her husband, the father of my grandchildren. "Jason!" I heard Amanda gasp, but there was more shock than outrage in her voice. I struggled to sit up, my vision swimming slightly from hitting my head. I tasted blood where my lip had split against my teeth. "Now look what you made me do," Jason said angrily, as if I had somehow forced his hand to strike my face. "This is exactly why you need supervision, Teresa. You're creating drama and provoking confrontations." I managed to get to my knees, one hand pressed against the back of my aching head. "You hit me," I said, still unable to fully process what had happened. "Amanda, he hit me." I looked to my daughter, expecting her to come to my defense, to be horrified by her husband's violence. Instead, her expression hardened as she made her choice. "You were hysterical, Mum. Jason was just trying to calm you down." The betrayal was complete. My own daughter was justifying violence against me. I struggled to my feet, determined now more than ever to get out of that house. "I'm leaving," I said again, trying to steady myself against the wall. "Don't try to stop me." As I moved toward the door, still slightly dazed, Amanda grabbed a handful of my hair and yanked me backward. "You're not going anywhere until we figure this out," she hissed. Her fingers twisted painfully in my grey hair. "Not after all the work we've put into this." The physical pain was shocking, but the callousness of her words even more so. "All the work we've put into this." As if I were a project, an asset to be managed, not a mother who had loved and raised her. Amanda began dragging me by my hair toward the door. Not to keep me inside, I realized with horror, but to get me out of the house now that their plan was exposed. Jason quickly opened the front door, and together they forced me outside. Amanda still gripping my hair, Jason pushing me from behind. I stumbled down the front steps onto the walkway, where Amanda finally released me with a shove that sent me sprawling onto the concrete. I looked up to see several neighbors watching from across the street, their expressions shocked but hesitant. "Get out," Amanda shouted now, playing to the audience of neighbors. "You can't keep accusing Jason of terrible things. Go take your medication." I realized they were pivoting their strategy in real time. Now that I had discovered their plan, they were creating a public scene where I appeared to be the unstable one, reinforcing their narrative of my supposed mental decline. $5 million, Amanda spat out. "That's what this is about. You'd rather hoard Dad's money than help your own family." She was deliberately mentioning the money in front of witnesses, establishing a motive for why I might make false accusations against them. It was calculated and cruel. Jason stood in the doorway, his expression now one of exaggerated concern. "Amanda, she's bleeding. Maybe we should call someone." My lip was indeed bleeding from his punch, and my knees were scraped from being pushed onto the walkway. I touched my face, feeling the warm stickiness of blood. "Let her go," Amanda said coldly. "She wants to leave so badly, let her go. See how far she gets without our help." I struggled to my feet again, aware of the neighbors watching, but too proud, or perhaps too shocked, to call out for their assistance. My car was parked in the driveway, keys in my pocket. If I could just make it there, I could drive away from this nightmare. As I limped toward my car, I heard one of the neighbors, Mrs. Chen, from across the street, calling out, "Mrs. Wilson, are you all right? Do you need help?" Before I could answer, Jason called back. "She's fine, Mrs. Chen. Just having one of her episodes. We've got it under control." Mrs. Chen looked uncertain, glancing between Jason's reassuring smile and my bloodied, dishevelled appearance. I made it to my car and fumbled with the keys, my hands shaking so badly I could barely aim for the lock. Behind me I could hear Amanda and Jason still putting on a show for the neighbours, talking loudly about medication schedules and doctor appointments. Finally managing to unlock the car, I collapsed into the driver's seat and locked the doors immediately. Through the windshield I could see Amanda and Jason standing on the front steps watching me. Amanda's face was flushed with anger, while Jason maintained his mask of concerned caretaker. I started the engine, hands still trembling. Where would I go? Tom lived in Arizona, too far to drive in my current state. Harold, my attorney, lived on the other side of town. Sarah from my grief group was probably at work. I needed time to think, to plan my next steps. As I put the car in reverse, I saw flashing lights reflected in my rearview mirror. A police car was pulling up behind me, blocking my exit. For a moment I feared that Jason or Amanda had somehow called them, that this was another part of their plan. But as the officers exited their vehicle, one of them immediately approached the driver's side of my car, while the other walked toward Jason and Amanda on the porch. The officer tapped on my window and I lowered it cautiously. "Ma'am, are you Teresa Wilson?" the officer asked a young woman with a concerned expression. "Yes," I replied, my voice shakier than I expected. "We received a 911 call about a domestic disturbance at this address. The caller reported seeing an elderly woman being assaulted. Can you tell me what happened here?" Relief flooded through me. Someone had called for help. One of the neighbours had seen what happened and called 911 instead of accepting Jason and Amanda's performance. "My son-in-law hit me," I said, touching my swollen lip. "And my daughter dragged me out of the house by my hair. I was trying to leave because I discovered they were planning to have me declared incompetent to gain control of my finances." The officer's expression remained professionally neutral, but her eyes flickered to my injuries. "Ma'am, would you be willing to step out of the vehicle? Paramedics are on their way to check your injuries." As I carefully exited the car, I could see the other officer speaking with Jason and Amanda, who were gesturing animatedly. Jason was doing most of the talking, his body language conveying reasonable concern rather than the violence he had displayed minutes earlier. The officer stayed with me as the paramedics arrived and began examining my injuries. The cut on my lip, the bruise forming on my cheek, the scraped knees and the tender spot on the back of my head where it had hit the floor. "These injuries are consistent with being struck and falling," the paramedic noted to the officer. While I was being examined, another police car arrived. One of the new officers approached Mrs. Chen, who was still watching from across the street. I couldn't hear their conversation, but I saw Mrs. Chen pointing toward the house, and then to me. After the paramedics had cleaned and bandaged my injuries, the first officer returned. "Mrs. Wilson, your daughter and son-in-law claim you became agitated during a discussion about your living arrangements and fell during a panic episode. They say they were trying to help you, not harm you." Of course they would say that. It fit perfectly with their narrative of my supposed mental decline. "That's not true," I said firmly. "I discovered documents showing they planned to have me declared incompetent. When I tried to leave, Jason hit me, and Amanda dragged me out by my hair." The officer nodded. "Mrs. Chen across the street corroborates your version of events. She says she clearly saw Mr. Parker strike you and Mrs. Parker drag you outside by your hair. Additionally, her home security camera captures the front of this property and may have recorded the incident." Hope sparked in my chest. There was evidence beyond just my word against theirs. "Would you like to press charges, Mrs. Wilson?" the officer asked gently. I looked toward the house where Amanda and Jason were still speaking with the other officers. My own daughter had participated in assaulting me, had betrayed me in the most fundamental way possible. The thought of pressing charges against her was almost unbearable. But then I thought of what they had planned to do. Not just the physical assault, but the calculated attempt to have me declared incompetent, to strip me of my autonomy and financial independence. They had been willing to destroy my reputation, my relationships, and my self-determination for money. Yes, I said, my voice stronger now. I want to press charges. The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. The officers reviewed the footage from Mrs. Chen's security camera, which clearly showed Jason striking me and Amanda dragging me by the hair. Based on the video evidence and my visible injuries, they arrested both Jason and Amanda for elder abuse and assault. I watched in stunned disbelief as my daughter and son-in-law were handcuffed and placed in separate police cars. Amanda looked back at me, once her expression a mixture of anger and disbelief, as if she couldn't comprehend that there would be consequences for their actions. The officers asked if I had a safe place to go, and I called Harold, my attorney. Despite being semi-retired, he immediately offered his guest room until other arrangements could be made. One of the officers drove me to Harold's home, as the paramedics had advised against driving myself due to possible concussion. Harold was waiting on his porch when we arrived, his wife Martha beside him. They helped me inside, settled me in their guest room, and promised to help me navigate the legal and practical challenges ahead. "We'll need to secure your finances immediately," Harold said, as Martha brought me tea, "and file for a restraining order against both of them." The reality of my situation began to sink in. My own daughter was under arrest for assaulting me. My grandchildren would be traumatized by their parents' arrest and the family rupture. The comfortable retirement Frank and I had planned so carefully had transformed into a legal battle with my own flesh and blood. The next day, after a restless night, interrupted by headaches from my injuries, Harold helped me contact the bank to secure my accounts and begin the process of filing a restraining order. We also arranged for me to meet with Detective Laura Simmons, who specialized in elder abuse cases. "Unfortunately, what you've experienced is more common than people realize," Detective Simmons explained during our meeting. "Financial elder abuse is frequently perpetrated by family members, particularly when substantial assets are involved." She took my formal statement and explained that both Jason and Amanda had been released on bail, but were under court orders to stay away from me. "What about my grandchildren?" I asked, my heart aching at the thought of Sophie and Dylan caught in this nightmare. "They're currently with Jason's parents," Detective Simmons informed me. "Child Protective Services has been notified as a standard procedure when both parents are arrested, but there's no indication the children were being mistreated." I was relieved the children were safe, but worried about what they were being told about the situation. Would Jason's parents continue the narrative that I was mentally unstable? Would Sophie and Dylan believe I had somehow caused their parents to be arrested out of spite or confusion? Over the next few weeks, the legal process moved forward. Jason and Amanda were formally charged with elder abuse assault and conspiracy to commit financial fraud based on the documents found in their home. My brother Tom flew in from Arizona to provide additional support, staying in a hotel nearby and helping me search for a new place to live. The media picked up the story. "Retired teacher assaulted by daughter and son-in-law over $1 million inheritance," read one headline. "Elder abuse case highlights financial vulnerability of seniors," proclaimed another. I avoided reading the articles or watching the news segments, but Harold kept me informed of any developments that might affect my case. Some friends from church and former teaching colleagues reached out with messages of support, shocked by what had happened. Others maintained uncomfortable silence, perhaps unsure what to believe or how to respond to such a family tragedy. My grief support group, however, rallied around me. Sarah, who had warned me about Jason's investment proposals, organized meals and transportation while I recovered and searched for new housing. Most surprising was the response from my neighbors at Jason and Amanda's development. Mrs. Chen, whose security camera had captured the assault, visited me at Harold's home, bringing homemade soup and offering to testify if the case went to trial. "I watched you being mistreated and almost didn't act," she admitted, her eyes downcast. "I almost believed them when they said you were confused. I'm sorry I hesitated to help." "You did help," I assured her. "You called 911. That made all the difference." Two other neighbors also came forward providing statements about what they had witnessed and reports of concerning behavior they had observed previously. One mentioned hearing Jason and Amanda arguing about money frequently. Another recalled Jason making comments about accessing Teresa's millions at a neighborhood barbecue months earlier. The pre-trial hearings revealed even more about Jason and Amanda's financial situation than I had known. They were over $400,000 in debt, not just the $300,000 they had asked to borrow. Their mortgage was underwater after they had taken out multiple home equity lines of credit. Jason had been fired not just for ethical violations, but was under investigation by the Securities and Exchange Commission for potential securities fraud. Most disturbing were the detailed notes found on their computer, outlining the plan to have me declared incompetent. The document included a timeline, contacts with a doctor willing to provide a questionable diagnosis, and even scripts for how to discuss my condition with friends and family to establish the narrative of my decline. Through my attorney, Amanda sent a letter requesting to speak with me. Harold advised against it until the legal proceedings were further along, but I couldn't help wondering what she wanted to say. Was there remorse, explanation, or just another attempt at manipulation? The grandchildren were my greatest concern. Through family court, I requested visitation rights, but Jason's parents opposed it, claiming I was attempting to turn the children against their parents. A court-appointed advocate was assigned to determine what was in Sophie and Dylan's best interest. When I finally met with the advocate, a compassionate woman named Judith Morris, she explained that the children were confused and upset by the sudden upheaval in their lives. "Sophie has asked about you," Judith told me. "She seems to understand that something serious happened, but she's getting mixed messages from different adults in her life." "What has she been told?" I asked. "That you and her parents had a serious disagreement about money, and now the courts are sorting it out," Judith replied. "She's a perceptive child. She mentioned that her father had been talking about your money for months, saying it should be family money, not just grandma's money. Even my 12-year-old granddaughter had picked up on the financial focus that had consumed her parents. I wondered what effect growing up in that environment would have on her values and understanding of family." Judith recommended supervised visitation to begin re-establishing my relationship with the grandchildren. Jason's parents objected, but were overruled by the family court judge. Our first visit was scheduled for the following week, at a neutral location with Judith present. Meanwhile, I found a small apartment to rent, using some of the proceeds from the sale of my original home. It was a modest 2-bedroom in a senior living community, nothing like the house Frank and I had shared, but it offered security and a fresh start. Tom helped me furnish it with a mix of new items and a few precious pieces from my former home that had been placed in storage before the move to Amanda and Jason's property. My favorite armchair where Frank used to read the newspaper every Sunday. The quilt my grandmother had made as a wedding gift. The family photos I had managed to take with me the day of the assault. The day of my first supervised visit with Sophie and Dylan arrived with a mixture of anticipation and anxiety. Would they be angry with me? Would they repeat accusations they had heard from their parents or grandparents? When they entered the visitation room at the Family Services Center, Sophie hung back uncertain while 9-year-old Dylan ran straight into my arms. "Grandma, I missed you," he exclaimed, his small arms tight around my waist. Sophie approached more cautiously. "Are you okay, Grandma? They said Dad hurt you." "I'm okay now, sweetheart," I assured her, opening my arm to include her in the embrace. After a moment's hesitation, she joined the hug. "Are Mum and Dad going to jail?" Dylan asked bluntly. "I don't know what will happen yet," I answered honestly. "The courts are figuring things out." "Grandpa Frank's parents said you're taking all the family money?" Sophie said, watching my reaction carefully. "They said that's why Mum and Dad were upset." "That's not true," I said gently. "The money your Grandpa Frank left was for my retirement to take care of me as I get older. I would never keep it from helping you and Dylan if you truly needed something important." Sophie seemed to process this. "Dad said we needed a bigger house with a pool. Is that important?" The innocent question revealed so much about what the children had been absorbing from their parents' values. "Having a safe place to live is important," I said carefully. "But the size of the house or whether it has a pool isn't what makes a home special. It's the love inside that matters most." The visit continued with games, stories about school, and careful conversations that avoided blaming either parent directly while still maintaining honesty appropriate for their ages. By the end of our time together, both children seemed more relaxed, though clearly still confused about the adult conflicts swirling around them. As the legal proceedings continued, Amanda finally requested a meeting through our attorneys. After much consideration, I agreed to see her with both lawyers present. When Amanda entered the conference room at Harold's office, I was shocked by her appearance. Always previously immaculate in designer clothes with perfect hair and makeup, she now looked tired and unkempt, her eyes hollow with dark circles beneath them. "Mum," she said simply, taking the seat across from me. "Amanda," I replied, unsure what else to say to this daughter I no longer recognized. She glanced at the lawyers. "Can we have a few minutes alone?" "That's not advisable," Harold began, but I interrupted him. "It's okay, Harold. Just a few minutes." Reluctantly, both attorneys stepped outside, leaving us alone for the first time since the assault. Amanda immediately began to cry. "I never thought it would go this far," she said between sobs. "Jason said we just needed to get control of the money to fix our financial problems, then everything would go back to normal." "Normal?" I repeated incredulously. "Planning to have me declared incompetent, physically assaulting me, that was supposed to lead back to normal." "I know it sounds crazy now," she admitted. "But we were desperate. Jason lost everything in some bad investments. We were about to lose the house. The kids would have had to change schools. I was terrified." "So you decided to steal from me instead of asking for help, honestly?" "We did ask. You wanted conditions oversight. Jason said that would never work, that you'd always hold it over our heads. Wanting to ensure money is used responsibly isn't controlling Amanda. It's being a good steward of resources." She looked down at her hands. "The prosecutor is offering a plea deal, probation instead of jail time if we plead guilty, and make restitution for the fraud attempts and your medical bills. Jason doesn't want to take it. He still thinks we can convince a jury it was all a misunderstanding." "And what do you think?" I asked, studying this stranger who had once been my loving daughter. "I think we did something terrible," she whispered. "To you, to our family, to the kids. I don't recognize myself anymore, Mum. How did we become these people?" It was the first glimmer of genuine remorse I had seen, the first acknowledgement of wrongdoing, rather than justification or blame. A tiny spark of hope flickered in my heart, though I guarded it carefully. "I don't know, Amanda. I've asked myself that question every day since it happened." She looked up, her eyes red from crying. "Would you oppose the plea deal if I took responsibility, tried to make amends?" I considered the question carefully. Part of me wanted justice, wanted them to face the full consequences of their actions. But another part, the mother who had held newborn Amanda in my arms 38 years ago, wanted a path to healing if genuine change was possible. "I would not oppose a plea arrangement that includes accountability and protections to prevent anything similar happening again," I said finally. Amanda nodded, wiping her eyes. "Thank you. I don't deserve your consideration after what we did." "No, you don't," I agreed. "But moving forward isn't about what any of us deserve. It's about finding a way to heal and protect everyone involved, especially the children." We called the attorneys back in and discussed potential terms for a plea arrangement. Amanda would accept full responsibility for her actions, complete community service, focused on elder issues, undergo financial counseling, and maintain distance from me except for supervised visits with the children. Jason's case would proceed separately, as he remained unwilling to acknowledge wrongdoing. As we concluded the meeting, Amanda paused at the door. "Mum, I know it doesn't fix anything, but I am sorry. Not just for getting caught, but for what we planned to do, what we did do. Dad would be so ashamed of me." The mention of Frank brought tears to my eyes. "Your father believed in redemption, Amanda, in the possibility of change and growth even after terrible mistakes. Try to remember that." After she left, Harold looked at me with concern. Are you sure about this, Teresa? They were willing to destroy your life for money. I'm not forgiving or forgetting, I assured him. But if there's a chance for Amanda to realize the gravity of what happened and make different choices going forward, that's better for Sophie and Dylan in the long run. And if it's just another manipulation, then the legal protections we're putting in place will have to be sufficient, I said. I can't control what Amanda chooses, only how I respond. In the end, Amanda accepted the plea deal. Jason did not, choosing instead to go to trial. He was ultimately convicted of elder abuse assault and conspiracy to commit fraud, receiving a 3-year sentence with the possibility of parole after 18 months. Jason's parents continued to blame me for their son's incarceration, making the grandchildren's situation even more complicated. The court maintained the supervised visitation arrangement, gradually increasing the time and reducing the supervision as the children adjusted. Through family therapy sessions that included Sophie, Dylan, and eventually Amanda, we began the slow process of rebuilding trust and understanding. Amanda separated from Jason and, living in a small apartment while working at an entry-level position in a different industry, seemed genuinely committed to changing her perspective and priorities. As for me, I found unexpected purpose in my new reality. The elder abuse prosecutor introduced me to a support group for seniors who had experienced similar betrayals by family members. Hearing their stories, I realized how fortunate I had been that Mrs. Chen called 911, that there had been video evidence, that I had resources for legal representation. Many seniors had no such advantages. Some had lost everything to children or caregivers they trusted. Others had been isolated, manipulated, and abused for years without intervention. Their stories broke my heart, but also ignited a determination to make a difference. I began volunteering with a local non-profit focused on elder rights and financial literacy for seniors. I shared my story at community events, helped staff a hotline for reporting suspected elder abuse, and eventually became a certified peer counselor for other victims navigating the complex emotions of family betrayal. 6 months after the assault, I received an unexpected letter from Sophie. Her supervised visits had evolved into occasional weekends at my apartment, but we had never directly discussed what had happened between her parents and me. "Dear Grandma," she wrote in careful handwriting, "Mum told me what really happened with you and Dad and the money. She said they did bad things because they cared more about stuff than people. I think I understand now why you were sad and angry. Dad still says it's not his fault, but I don't believe him anymore. Mum is different now. She doesn't buy us expensive things, but she spends more time with us. I like it better this way. I love you, Sophie." The letter was a bittersweet milestone. No 12-year-old should have to process such adult betrayals and reckonings, yet Sophie was finding her way toward understanding and truth, despite the difficult circumstances. I kept the letter in my bedside table, a reminder that healing was possible, even after the deepest wounds. 2 years have passed since that terrible day when Jason's fist connected with my face and Amanda dragged me from their home by my hair. So much has changed, yet some truths remain constant. The physical wounds healed quickly. The bruises faded, the cut on my lip left no scar. The scrapes on my knees disappeared within weeks. The emotional wounds have taken longer, some still tender to the touch, like newly formed scar tissue. I've learned that healing isn't linear. Some days I feel strong and purposeful, grateful for the new connections and meaning I've found. Other days grief ambushes me unexpectedly, a sharp pang of loss for the daughter I thought I knew, the family life we once shared, the retirement Frank and I had planned together. Jason served 14 months of his sentence before being released on parole. He and Amanda divorced during his incarceration. She has primary custody of the children, with Jason having supervised visitation due to the violent nature of his crime. He has made no attempt to contact me, though I occasionally hear from Amanda that he still maintains I exaggerated or fabricated the assault, despite the video evidence. Amanda continues her effort toward redemption. She completed financial counseling and now lives within her means in a modest townhouse, working as an administrative assistant at a local community college. Our relationship remains cautious, but improving. We meet for coffee once a month, always in public places, carefully navigating conversations about the children, avoiding the still painful topics of the past. Sophie, now 14, and Dylan, 11, spend one weekend a month with me. Sophie has become an advocate for elder respect at her middle school, even organizing a Grandparents' Appreciation Day that earned recognition from the school district. Dylan still struggles with confusion about his father's actions, but has found stability in regular routines and therapy. My volunteer work with elder abuse prevention has expanded into part-time paid consultation with the district attorney's office, reviewing cases for red flags, and helping prosecutors understand the complex emotional dynamics of family financial exploitation. I also lead a support group for seniors rebuilding their lives after similar betrayals. Last month, I was invited to testify before a state legislative committee considering expanded protections for vulnerable adults. As I shared my experience and the lessons I've learned, I felt Frank's presence beside me, his steady support and unwavering integrity guiding my words. Financial elder abuse leaves wounds that go far beyond monetary loss, I told the committee members. It shatters trust, destroys family bonds, and threatens the victim's sense of identity and security. When the perpetrators are your own children, people you raised and loved, the psychological impact is devastating in ways that are difficult to quantify or heal. The committee chair asked what I thought might have prevented my situation. Education and awareness, I replied without hesitation. Not just for seniors, but for families discussing inheritance and financial planning. Money conversations are often taboo, clouded by emotions and unspoken expectations. We need to normalize direct, honest discussion about finances across generations. As I've spoken with other survivors of family financial exploitation, I've recognized common threads in our stories. The sense of shame that initially kept us silent. The disbelief from others who couldn't imagine family members being capable of such betrayal. The painful process of establishing boundaries with loved ones who have proven untrustworthy. But I've also witnessed remarkable resilience. Seniors who lost everything starting over in their 70s or 80s with courage and determination. Families finding new ways to relate after painful ruptures. Communities rallying around vulnerable members once awareness is raised. The $5 million that almost cost me my autonomy and safety remains largely intact, now protected by stronger legal safeguards. I've established a trust for Sophie and Dylan's college education that cannot be accessed by either parent. I make regular donations to organizations supporting elder rights and family violence prevention, and I've set aside funds for my own long-term care, ensuring I won't need to depend on family members as I age. Money itself was never the true issue, I've come to realize. It was what the money represented. To Frank and me, it represented security, the fruit of decades of careful planning and modest living. To Jason, it represented status, the ability to maintain appearances and escape the consequences of poor decisions. To Amanda, it became a measure of love, a transactional assessment of how much I valued her and her children. The most valuable lesson I've learned is that true wealth has nothing to do with bank balances or investment portfolios. True wealth lies in authentic relationships built on mutual respect and integrity. In the support of friends who show up during your darkest hours. In the courage to face difficult truths and the strength to begin again after betrayal. Today, as I sit in my small but comfortable apartment surrounded by mementos of my life with Frank and photographs of Sophie and Dylan, I feel neither rich nor poor in conventional terms. I feel grateful for the clarity that comes after illusions are stripped away. Grateful for the chance to use my painful experience to help others. Grateful for the small, genuine moments of connection that have replaced the superficial family harmony I once mistook for love. Frank used to say that character is revealed not in easy times, but in moments of pressure and temptation. My daughter and son-in-law failed that test of character, but their failure doesn't define the rest of my life or even the future of our family. Each day brings new choices, new opportunities to align our actions with our deepest values. If you're facing a similar situation with family members, pressuring you about money or inheritance, remember that love doesn't demand financial sacrifice or control. True family support means respecting boundaries and dignity. You deserve relationships based on genuine care, not calculation. And if you've already experienced betrayal, know that healing is possible, even when the path forward looks nothing like the life you once envisioned. Have you ever felt pressured by family about money or inheritance? Or have you witnessed concerning behavior toward elderly relatives? Share your experience in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please subscribe to hear more stories of recovery and resilience. Remember to like and share this video to help others who might be facing similar situations in silence. Thank you for listening to my journey from betrayal to rebuilding, and may you find strength for whatever challenges you're facing in your own life.